What becomes of those who fall to darkness when the shadow they served is no more? In the ancient folds of Middle-earth, where stars whisper secrets to mountains and rivers, sing of forgotten kings. This question lingers like a breath held too long. It is not a query for answers, but for echoes, echoes of the heart's quiet yearning, of the soul's silent trembling, of the hope that glimmers when all else is ash. Today we tread softly into the ruins of Mordor, seeking the fate of the Nazgûl. Those spectral wraiths who were once men, once kings whose names are lost to the winds, whose voices are but wails in the void. Their tale is not one of victory or defeat, but of bondage, of temptation, of the weight of eternity, borne by those who traded light for shadow. Let us walk with reverence, for the ground is hallowed by sorrow, and the story we weave is a mirror to our own. In the beginning, there was desire. Not the fleeting want of a moment, but a hunger, vast as the sea, deep as the roots of the earth. 9 kings of men stood at the zenith of their realms, their banners unfurled against the sky, their crowns agleam with the fire of ambition. They were not mere rulers, these 9, but beacons of their people's dreams. The first was a warrior whose blade had carved peace from the chaos of war, his name sung in the halls of his kin. The second was a scholar whose wisdom wove laws that bound tribes into nations, his scrolls revered as sacred. The third was a poet whose verses stirred hearts, to valor his words, etched in stone and memory. The fourth was a healer whose hands mended broken bodies and spirits, his compassion a light in dark times. The fifth was a navigator whose ships charted uncharted seas, his courage opening new worlds. The sixth was a builder whose towers touched the stars, his vision shaping the earth. The seventh was a seer whose dreams foretold the tides of fate, his insight guiding his people. The eighth was a hunter whose skill fed his tribe his strength, a bulwark against want. The ninth was a father whose love for his children shaped a kingdom, his heart the foundation of his rule. Each bore a fire unique, a vision that stretched beyond the horizon of their mortal days. The warrior dreamed of a world without war where his sword could rest. The scholar sought knowledge that would outlast empires, a legacy of truth. The poet yearned for songs that would echo through eternity, a voice unbroken by time. The healer longed to banish suffering, to heal all wounds. The navigator craved seas, uncharted paths no man had trod. The builder envisioned cities that would stand forever monuments to his will. The seer sought to master fate, to shape the future with his visions. The hunter desired strength, unending to provide for his people always. The father wished for his children's children to live in peace, his love a shield against the world. Yet within each heart flickered a shadow, a longing for more power to shield their realms, more years to see their dreams fulfilled, more dominion to ensure their names would never fade. They were not evil, these kings, not in the way we conjure evil with flames and horns. They were human, flawed, as we all are, their virtues sharpened by pride, their courage tempered by fear. They loved their people, their lands, their legacies. But love unchecked can twist into craving, and craving into ruin. Into this crucible of yearning stepped Sauron the deceiver, whose eyes burned with malice, cloaked in charm, whose voice was a melody of lies. He did not come with chains or threats. He came with promises, with gifts, with the illusion of freedom. He knew the hearts of men as a smith knows his forge, and he crafted his lure with precision. Take these, he whispered his words, smooth as silk, sharp as obsidian, and you shall be as gods. Take these, and your kingdoms shall endure beyond the stars. Take these, and death shall kneel before you. The gifts were rings 9 in number forged in the fires of Mount Doom, each a marvel of craft, each a key to eternity. Their surfaces gleamed with runes that pulsed with a strange, alluring light, their weight both heavy and light in the palm. The kings one by one closed their hands around them, their eyes alight with dreams of forever. The warrior saw battles won, enemies vanquished, his name immortal. The scholar saw libraries, mythic, as oceans, his wisdom guiding generations unborn. The poet saw songs that would echo through the ages, his verses a flame unquenched. The healer saw a world without pain, his touch eternal. The navigator saw seas uncharted, his ships sailing forever. The builder saw cities that would never crumble, his towers defying time. The seer saw visions unbound by fate, his dreams shaping destiny. The hunter saw hunts without end, his strength undying. The father saw his children's children ruling in peace, his love unending. They took the rings not with greed, but with hope, not with malice, but with love. But the rings were not gifts. They were shackles. The rings were not freedom. They were a cage. The transformation was not swift, but it was relentless. At first, the rings seemed to fulfill their promises. The kings grew mightier. Their commands carried across continents. Their lives stretched beyond the span of mortal men. The warrior led armies that none could withstand his banner, a terror to foes. His battles were won with ease, his enemies scattered like leaves before the wind. The scholar penned treatises that shaped the laws of empires, his mind sharper than ever. His scrolls were copied in every hall, his words, law in distant lands. The poet sang ballads that moved kings to tears, his voice a power unto itself. His songs were sung by children, by warriors, by priests. Each note a spark of eternity. The healer cured plagues that baffled others. His hands a miracle. His touch brought life where death had reigned, his name a prayer on the lips of the saved. The navigator charted paths through storms, his ships unerring, his fleets crossed seas. No man had dared his maps, a treasure beyond gold. The builder raised fortresses that stood against time, his stones unyielding. His towers gleamed in the sun, his cities a marvel to all who saw. The seer foretold victories that came to pass, his visions unerring. His dreams guided kings, his warnings saved nations. The hunter brought down beasts that fed nations. His skill unmatched, his arrows flew true. His strength a legend, the father saw his lineage grow, his kingdom flourishing under his care. His children ruled wisely, his love a light that never dimmed. Yet slowly, insidiously, the rings began to tighten their grip. The warrior's victories grew hollow. Each battle a shadow of the last, his heart heavy with blood. The scholar's wisdom turned to pride, his scrolls, a monument to his own glory. Not truth. The poet's songs became laments, each verse a cry for what was lost, not gained. The healer's miracles faltered. Each life saved a reminder of those he could not save, his hands trembling. The navigator's seas grew dark, each voyage a search for something he could not name, his ships adrift. The builder's towers cast long shadows, each stone a weight upon his soul, his cities empty of joy. The seer's visions turned to nightmares, each dream a maze without end. His eyes clouded. The hunter's hunts became hungers, each kill a need, not a triumph. His strength a curse. The father's children grew distant, each generation a reminder of his absence, his love a chain. Their laughter grew hollow, their sleep troubled by dreams of shadow. Their flesh once strong began to wither, though their bodies did not die. Their voices once resonant grew thin, though their words still shook the earth. Their eyes once bright with purpose became hollow, seeing only the will of Sauron, whose own ring, the one bound them all. They were no longer kings but wraiths. Nazgûl, the ring wraiths, clad in black, their forms half in the world of men, half in the unseen realm where shadows dwell. Their crowns were dust, their thrones forgotten, their names erased by the tide of time. The warrior's blade was now a tool of terror. His battles fought for Sauron's glory, not his people's peace. The scholar's scrolls were burned, his wisdom twisted to serve the Dark Lord's lies. The poet's songs were silenced, his voice a wail that chilled the heart. The healer's hands brought death, not life, his compassion a memory. The navigator's ships sank his seas, a prison of shadow. The builder's towers crumbled his cities, a ruin of despair. The seer's visions were Sauron's, his dreams a tool of domination. The hunter's arrows served the hunt for the ring, his strength a weapon of fear. The father's children were gone, his love a void filled by servitude. They became hunters, relentless and tireless, driven by the One Ring's call. Their black horses left no trace on the earth. Their swords gleamed with a cold, unnatural light. Their cries pierced the hearts of the living. They sought the ring, not for themselves, but for Sauron, whose dominion was their prison. They were his eyes in the darkness, his hands in the light, his wrath in the silence. Yet in their endless hunt, there was no joy, no triumph, only the hollow ache of eternity. They were not alive yet. They could not die. They were not free yet. They could not rest. They were their shadows, stretched thin across the ages. Their existence a torment of servitude. What is it to lose oneself? Not to misplace a trinket or forget a path, but to lose the essence of who you are, the spark that makes you you. The Nazgûl knew this loss, for their humanity was stripped away, layer by layer, until only a shadow remained. Their memories of love, of laughter, of the warmth of a summer's day were burned to ash by Sauron's will. Their dreams of glory, of legacy, of eternity became chains that bound them to an endless hunt. They were no longer the warrior, the scholar, the poet, the healer, the navigator, the builder, the seer, the hunter, the father. They were the Nazgûl, a collective of terror, their individual flames snuffed out by the One Ring's fire. Yet even in their spectral forms, there lingered a trace of what they had been. An echo of majesty, a whisper of sorrow, a flicker of the men they once were. It was this flicker, faint as a star in the dawn, that made their tragedy all the more profound. Consider the weight of such an existence, to be a king, once with the world at your feet, and then to be nothing. A wraith, a servant, a shadow of a... What did they feel, these nine, as they rode beneath the stars? Did they remember their names, their faces, their homes? Did they dream of the children they once held, the battles they once fought, the songs they once sang? Or had Sauron's will erased all such memories, leaving only the cold fire of obedience? The tales do not say, but we can imagine, and in imagining, we touch the heart of their sorrow. The warrior riding through the night might have glimpsed a battlefield where he once stood as a hero, not a harbinger of doom. The scholar passing a ruined library might have recalled the scent of parchment, the weight of a quill in his hand. The poet hearing a distant song might have remembered a verse he once wrote, a line that spoke of love, not loss. The healer seeing a wounded man flee in terror might have felt the ghost of his old compassion, a pang for the lives he no longer saved. The navigator, crossing a river, might have sensed the pull of the sea, a longing for the open waves. The builder passing a crumbled wall might have seen the towers he once raised, their stones now dust. The seer gazing into the darkness might have caught a vision of his old dreams untainted by shadow. The hunter tracking his prey might have recalled the joy of a hunt for food, not fear. The father hearing a child's cry might have felt the ache of his lost love, a wound that never healed. They were not monsters born of fire and brimstone. They were men, and their fall was a warning, a lament, a mirror held up to our own desires. They were not so different from us, these kings who sought to protect, to build, to endure. Their sin was not in wanting, but in wanting too much, in believing that power could conquer time, that dominion could outlast death. Their fall was not a single act, but a series of choices, each small, each seemingly harmless, until the weight of those choices crushed them. The warrior chose victory over mercy. The scholar chose pride over truth. The poet chose glory over love. The healer chose miracles over humility. The navigator chose adventure over home. The builder chose monuments over meaning. The seer chose control over faith. The hunter chose strength over care. The father chose legacy over presence. Each choice was a step into shadow. Each ring a link in the chain that bound them. The years turned, and the second age gave way to the third. The one ring lost in the waters of the Anduin passed from the world's sight, but its malice endured. The Nazgûl, bound to its power, continued their hunt, their forms growing ever more spectral, their terror ever more potent. They haunted the shadows of Middle-earth, their presence a blight upon the living. In the north they established the realm of Angmar, where the Witch King, their leader, waged war against the kingdoms of men. His malice was a storm, his armies a tide that engulfed the northern realm of Arnor, splintering its people, scattering its kings. The Witch King's sorcery turned fields to ash rivers, to poison hope, to despair. In the south, they stirred fear in the hearts of Harad and Rûn, their black cloaks a herald of doom. The men of Harad whispered of shadows that moved without sound, of eyes that burned in the dark. The riders of Rûn spoke of wraiths who rode the wind. Their cries a call to surrender, yet the Nazgûl were not invincible. The elves with their ancient wisdom defied them, their light, a shield against the dark. The men of Gondor with their stubborn courage held them at bay, their towers standing firm against the shadow. And the ring, their purpose remained hidden, a torment that drove them to madness. The Nazgûl's servitude was not merely physical, but spiritual, a bondage of the soul. To be a wraith was to be a prisoner in one's own existence, a mind trapped in a form that could not feel, a heart bound to a will that was not its own. They were not free to choose, to love, to hope. They were driven, compelled, enslaved. Their hunt for the ring was not a quest, but a compulsion, a need as deep as hunger, as relentless as thirst. The ring called to them, its voice, a whisper in their minds, a fire in their essence, a chain around their souls. They could not resist it, could not ignore it, could not escape it. It was their purpose, their prison, their torment. And yet, in their servitude, there was a paradox. They were powerful, yet powerless, feared, yet fearful, eternal, yet empty. They were the Nazgûl, Sauron's greatest servants, yet they were nothing, shadows, without substance, wraiths, without will. When the ring was found again in the hands of a creature called Gollum, then passed to Bilbo Baggins, a hobbit of the Shire, the Nazgûl's hunt grew fiercer. They rode to the Shire, their black cloaks trailing like storm clouds, their voices a terror that froze the blood. The green hills, once alive with laughter and song, grew silent under their shadow. The hobbits, simple and unassuming, felt a fear they could not name, a chill that seeped into their bones. The Nazgûl pursued Frodo Baggins, the new Ringbearer, through green hills and shadowed forests, their swords gleaming with malice. At Weathertop, they struck their blades, wounding Frodo's flesh, their presence wounding his soul. The wound was not merely physical, but spiritual, a touch of the wraith world that threatened to draw him into shadow. Yet they were driven back by the fire of Aragorn's sword, by the courage of hobbits, by the light of elvish magic. At the ford of Bruinen, the waters rose against them, summoned by Elrond's power and Arwen's will, and their forms were scattered, their horses swept away. The flood was not merely water, but a cleansing, a rebuke, a reminder that the world of light could still resist the dark. They returned clad anew, their malice undimmed, but their power was not absolute. The Nazgûl were bound to the ring, and the ring was bound to Sauron and Sauron's power. Though vast, was not infinite. They were shadows, and shadows need light to cast them, a light that was fading as the ring's fate hung in the balance. The War of the Ring unfolded, a clash of light and shadow that shook the foundations of Middle-earth. The Nazgûl rode as Sauron's heralds, their cries sowing panic, their presence a harbinger of doom. They flew on, fell beasts, winged creatures of terror, their shadows darkening the sky, at the battle of the Pelennor. Fields the Witch King, greatest of their number, led the armies of Mordor against the white walls of Minas Tirith. He was a terror beyond mortal reckoning, his mace a thunderbolt, his voice a death knell. His presence broke the gates of the city. His will broke the hearts of its defenders. Yet he fell not to a man, but to a woman. Éowyn Shieldmaiden of Rohan, whose courage burned brighter than his malice. And with her stood Merry, a hobbit, small in stature but vast in heart, whose blade struck the blow that unmade him. The Witch King's fall was a sign, a crack in the shadow, a whisper that even the darkest power could be undone. The Nazgûl's defeat was not merely a loss of their leader, but a wound to their essence. They were 9 bound as one, and the loss of the Witch King was a fracture in their unity, a diminishment of their terror. Yet they rode on, driven by the ring's call, their purpose unyielding. They pursued Frodo and Sam, who carried the ring through the wastes of Mordor. Their journey a testament to the quiet strength of the small, the humble, the overlooked. The Nazgûl's presence was a shadow over their path, a fear that lingered in the air, a weight that pressed upon their hearts. Yet Frodo and Sam endured not because they were mighty, but because they were true. Not because they were fearless, but because they loved. Their journey was not one of triumph, but of endurance, of sacrifice, of the quiet courage that carries on when all hope is gone. In the heart of Mordor, in the Samath, Naur, the chamber of fire, the ring was unmade, cast into the flames from whence it came. Not by Frodo's will, for he faltered, claiming the ring for himself, but by the strange mercy of fate, through Gollum's treachery, through the ring's own malice. The earth shook, the skies burned, and Barad-dûr, the dark tower, crumbled into dust. Sauron's spirit, vast and terrible, rose like a storm, only to be scattered by the winds of the west. His power was broken, his dominion ended, and with him the Nazgûl's fate was sealed. The One Ring, the source of their existence, their torment, their bondage was gone, and with its destruction, the chains that bound them began to break. Picture the scene, the ash of Mordor swirling in the air, the ground trembling beneath the weight of a dying age. The Nazgûl, their black robes tattered, their forms, unraveling like smoke, stand upon the precipice of oblivion. For the first time in centuries, they feel something beyond the cold grip of Sauron's will. It is not pain, not fear, but a stirring, a trembling, a whisper of release. Camus the Easterling, whose name was once sung in the steppes, feels his spectral form dissolve. The weight of ages lifts, and he remembers the wind on his face, the laughter of his kin, the warmth of a fire under the stars. The black captain who led Sauron's armies with an iron hand senses his essence fading, and he glimpses the man he was, a leader, a protector, a fool who sought to cheat death. Dendra the faceless enigma, whose terror haunted the nightmares of men, feels a lightness, as if the shadows that cloaked him are peeling away, revealing a spark of something long forgotten. The healer whose hands once saved lives feels the ghost of his old compassion, a warmth that pierces the cold. The navigator whose ships once sailed free senses the pull of the sea, a call to rest. The builder whose towers once stood tall sees his stones as dust, yet finds peace in their fall. The seer whose visions once shaped fate glimpses a dream of light, not shadow. The hunter whose arrows once fed his people feels the weight of his bow lift, his hunger stilled. The father whose love once defined him hears the echo of his children's laughter, a sound that breaks his heart and heals it. One by one, the Nazgûl unravel their forms, dissipating into the void, their wails becoming a song, not of agony, but of release. In that moment, they are men again, if only in spirit. The memories they thought lost return, like leaves stirred by a gentle wind. The warrior sees his battles not as triumphs, but as burdens. The blood he shed a weight upon his soul. The scholar sees his scrolls not as wisdom, but as pride his knowledge, a chain that bound him. The poet sees his songs not as glory, but as longing, his verses a cry for what was lost. The healer sees his patients not as miracles, but as failures. Each life he could not save a wound in his heart. The navigator sees his seas not as conquests, but as wanderings, his journeys a search for home. The builder sees his towers not as monuments, but as follies, his stones a testament to vanity. The seer sees his visions not as truths, but as shadows, his dreams a maze without end. The hunter sees his hunts not as victories, but as hungers, his strength a mask for want. The father sees his children not as legacies, but as loves, his heart a flame that never died. They feel the weight of their choices, the burden of their fall, the sorrow of their long servitude. Yet they feel something else, something new, a glimmer of joy, fragile and fleeting at the prospect of freedom. For the first time in an age, they are not bound. For the first time in an age, they are not driven. For the first time in an age, they are simply themselves. What is freedom, if not the absence of chains? Not the power to rule, not the strength to conquer, but the quiet grace of being unburdened by the weight of desire. The Nazgûl, in their final moments, knew this freedom, however brief, however fragile. Their spirits released from Sauron's dominion drift into the unknown, carried by the winds that blow from the west. Do they find rest? Do they find forgiveness? Do they find the halls of their fathers, or some other fate beyond the circles of the world? The tales of Middle-earth are silent, and their silence is a mercy. But in that silence we hear a truth. Even the darkest of souls, even the most lost of wanderers, may find a moment of light, a moment of grace before the end. Their story is not one of redemption, for redemption is a choice, and they had long since forsaken choice. Nor is it one of damnation, for damnation is eternal, and their end was not eternal. It is a story of release of the soul's quiet, return to itself of the fleeting hope that even in the deepest shadow there is a spark that cannot be extinguished. Let us linger in the ruins of Mordor, where the ash settles and the wind sings a mournful song. Let us stand among the fallen stones of Barad-dûr, where the Nazgûl's shadows once loomed, and ask ourselves, what chains do we bear, though we see them not? What rings do we clasp, though they gleam with promise? What shadows do we serve, though we call them light? The Nazgûl's tale is not theirs alone. It is ours, written in the quiet moments when we choose, when we yearn, when we hope. It is a tale of temptation, of the seductive whisper that promises eternity but delivers only bondage. It is a tale of loss, of the slow erosion of self that comes when we trade truth for power. It is a tale of hope, of the faint flickering light that endures even in the darkest of nights. The Nazgûl were not the only ones to face temptation in Middle-earth. Frodo Baggins, small and unassuming, bore the one ring, and its weight nearly broke him. He felt its call, its promise, its lie. And in the end he faltered, claiming the ring for himself. Yet he was spared not by his own strength, but by the pity of Bilbo, the mercy of Sam, the treachery of Gollum. Aragorn, here of Isildur, faced the shadow of his ancestors' failure. Yet he chose a different path, wielding his sword, not for dominion, but for protection. Gandalf, wise and powerful, refused the ring when it was offered, knowing that even his goodness could be twisted by its malice. Galadriel, Lady of Lothlorien, faced the ring's lure and saw the queen she could become, yet she chose to diminish, to pass into the west, to remain herself. Eowyn, Shield Maiden of Rohan, faced the shadow of despair and the Witch King's terror. Yet she stood firm, her courage a light that pierced the dark Mary. A hobbit faced the same terror, yet his small hand struck a blow that changed the tide of battle. Each faced the same choice as the Nazgûl, and each chose differently, not perfectly, not without struggle, but with a courage that the Nine had forgotten. And what of Sauron himself? He was not a mortal man, but a Maya, a being of divine origin, whose fall was even greater than that of the Nazgûl. Once a servant of Olay, the smith of the Valor, he sought order, perfection, control. His desire was not for chaos, but for a world shaped by his vision. Yet in his quest for order, he became chaos. In his quest for perfection, he became destruction. His rings, his tower, his armies, all were extensions of his will, and all crumbled when the One Ring was destroyed. His fate was not release like the Nazgûl, but dissipation, a scattering of his spirit too weak to ever rise again. The Nazgûl at least found a moment of freedom. Sauron found only the void. The world they left behind was not the same Middle-earth, scarred by war, began to heal. The fields of the Pelennor grew green again. The towers of Minas Tirith shone under the sun. The hobbits returned to their shire, planting seeds and singing songs. The elves, whose time was fading, sailed to the west, their songs of starlight and sea fading into memory. The dwarves, delving deep into the earth, rebuilt their halls, their forges burning bright. The men of Gondor and Rohan raised new banners, their kingdoms flourishing under the rule of Aragorn. The king returned. The hobbits, who loved the simple things, told tales of ghosts by the fire, but their laughter drove the darkness away. Yet the shadow of the Nazgûl lingered, not as a threat, but as a memory, a caution, a tale told in the quiet moments when the world seemed too vast, too heavy, too dark. What does it mean to leave a legacy? Not a name carved in stone, not a kingdom that endures, but a mark upon the world, however small, however fleeting. The Nazgûl's legacy was one of terror, of sorrow, of warning. They were a shadow that passed, a storm that broke, a song that faded. Yet in their fading, they left behind a truth. The light endures not because it is strong, but because it is kind. Not because it conquers, but because it heals. Not because it demands, but because it gives. The Nazgûl, in their fall, in their bondage, in their release, remind us that even the darkest of paths can lead to a moment of grace, a moment of hope, a moment of light. Let us wander further into the deeper currents of their tale. For the Nazgûl's story is not merely one of kings and rings, but of the soul's journey through shadow and light. Their fall was a descent into silence, a silence not of peace but of absence, the absence of self, of choice, of meaning. To be a wraith is to be a void, a hollow where once there was life. The Nazgûl's silence was their torment, for they could not speak their own desires, could not sing their own songs, could not weep for their own losses. They were bound to Sauron's voice, his will, his purpose, and in that bondage, they lost the ability to be anything but his echo. Yet in their final moments, as the ring was unmade, that silence broke, and they found a voice not to speak, but to sing a song of release, a song of return, a song of being. This breaking of silence is a thread that runs through Middle-earth's tales. Frodo, burdened by the ring, fell into silence, his heart heavy with the weight of its malice. Yet Sam's voice, steady and true, called him back with songs of the Shire, with tales of home, with the quiet strength of friendship. Aragorn, haunted by the silence of his ancestors' failures, found his voice in leadership, in sacrifice, in the vow to protect those who could not protect themselves. Gandalf, who faced the silence of death in Moria, returned as the White, his voice a beacon of hope in a world shadowed by despair. Galadriel, who faced the silence of her own desires, spoke her refusal of the ring, her voice a testament to her choice to remain true. Éowyn, who faced the silence of her own despair, found her voice in defiance, her cry a challenge to the dark. Merry, who faced the silence of his own fear, found his voice in action, his blade a word that spoke louder than any shout. The Nazgûl too found their voice, if only for a moment, in the instant of their release, when the chains of Sauron's will fell away, and they were free to be, to feel, to remember. What is the power of a voice? Not the shout that commands armies, not the decree that shapes empires, but the whisper that stirs the heart, the song that heals the soul, the cry that breaks the silence. The Nazgûl's story is a testament to the loss of voice, to the danger of letting another speak, for you, to the tragedy of forgetting your own song. Yet it is also a testament to the return of voice, to the moment when the soul speaks, however briefly, however faintly. The Nazgûl's song in their final moments was not one of triumph or sorrow, but of being a song that said, "I am," a song that said, "I was," a song that said, "I am free." The Nazgûl's tale is also one of fear, not merely the fear they inspired, but the fear they felt. To be a wraith is to live in fear, not of death, for death is denied, but of nothingness, of the void that lies at the heart of servitude. They feared the ring's loss, for it was their purpose, their existence, their chain. They feared Sauron's wrath, for his will was their world, his anger, their torment. They feared the light, for it revealed their emptiness, their lack, their loss. Yet in their final moments, they faced a new fear, the fear of freedom, of the unknown, of the vastness that awaited them. And in facing that fear, they found something greater. Not courage, for courage is a choice, but grace, a gift unlooked, for a light unearned. Fear is a thread that weaves through all of Middle-earth's tales. Frodo feared the ring's power, its weight, its call, yet he bore it step by step through the darkness. Sam feared for Frodo, for their journey, for their home, yet he followed his heart, a shield against despair. Aragorn feared his own weakness, the shadow of Isildur's failure, yet he walked the paths of the dead, his will unbroken. Gandalf feared the Balrog, the abyss of Moria, yet he faced it, his light a flame in the dark. Galadriel feared her own desire, the lure of power, yet she chose to let it pass, her heart steady. Eowyn feared a cage, a life without honor, yet she rode to battle her fear, a fire that burned bright. Merry feared his own smallness, his own weakness, yet he struck the Witch King, his fear a strength he did not know. The Nazgûl too feared, and in their fear they were bound, but in their release they were freed, not from fear, but through it into the light beyond. The Nazgûl's tale is also one of burden, not merely the burden of their servitude, but the burden of their choices, their losses, their lives. To be a king is to bear a burden, the weight of a people, a land, a legacy. To be a wraith is to bear a greater burden, the weight of a self lost, a soul bound, a life unmade. The Nazgûl carried their rings, their chains, their shadows through centuries, through wars, through the endless hunt. They carried the weight of Sauron's will, a burden heavier than stone, sharper than steel. Yet in their final moments, that burden lifted, and they carried something new. Not a weight, but a lightness, a freedom, a hope. Burden is a thread that binds all of Middle-earth's heroes. Frodo bore the ring, a burden that broke his body, his mind, his heart, yet he carried it to the end. Sam bore Frodo a burden of love, of loyalty, of friendship, yet he never faltered. Aragorn bore the crown, a burden of duty, of history, of hope, yet he wore it with grace. Gandalf bore the light, a burden of wisdom, of sacrifice, of fire, yet he shone through the dark. Galadriel bore the mirror, a burden of vision, of truth, of choice, yet she looked and chose wisely. Eowyn bore her shield, a burden of honor, of courage, of defiance, yet she held it high. Merry bore his sword, a burden of smallness, of bravery, of heart, yet he struck true. The Nazgûl too bore their burden, and in their release they laid it down, not with triumph, but with peace, a peace that was their own. The Nazgûl's tale is also one of legacy, not the legacy they sought, but the legacy they left. They sought immortality, glory, dominion, but they left terror, sorrow, warning. Their names were forgotten, their kingdoms dust, their dreams ash. Yet in their passing, they left something else, a truth, a lesson, a light. They left a story not of their fall, but of their release. A story that says even the darkest soul can find a moment of grace. Even the most lost wanderer can find a moment of home. Their legacy is not in their power, but in their warning, not in their terror, but in their hope. Legacy is a thread that weaves through Middle-earth's history. Frodo's legacy was not the ring, but the Shire saved by his sacrifice, healed by his love. Sam's legacy was not the journey but the home rebuilt by his hands, nurtured by his heart. Aragorn's legacy was not the crown, but the kingdom united by his will, guided by his wisdom. Gandalf's legacy was not the light, but the hope kindled by his fire, carried by his words. Galadriel's legacy was not the mirror, but the choice made by her heart, echoed by her people. Eowyn's legacy was not the battle, but the courage shown by her stand, remembered by her kin. Mary's legacy was not the blade, but the heart, small yet vast, brave yet humble. The Nazgûl's legacy, too, is not what they were, but what they became. Not what they did, but what they left, a warning, a hope, a light. The Nazgûl's tale is also one of loss, not merely the loss of their humanity, but the loss of their selves, their dreams, their loves. To be a wraith is to lose everything. Name, face, voice, heart. The Nazgûl lost their kingdoms, their families, their hopes, their very beings. They lost the warrior's honor, the scholar's truth, the poet's song, the healer's compassion, the navigator's sea, the builder's stone, the seer's vision, the hunter's strength, the father's love. Yet in their loss, they found something not in life but in death, not in servitude but in release. They found a moment, a fleeting moment, when the loss was undone, when the self returned, when the heart sang. Loss is a thread that binds all of Middle-earth's stories. Frodo lost his innocence, his peace, his home, yet he found a purpose, a love, a truth. Sam lost his comfort, his safety, his ease, yet he found a friend, a duty, a home. Aragorn lost his youth, his freedom, his anonymity, yet he found a crown, a people, a love. Gandalf lost his life, his form, his ease, yet he found a light, a mission, a return. Galadriel lost her power, her realm, her time, yet she found a choice, a peace, a west. Eowyn lost her hope, her place, her fear, yet she found a battle, a love, a life. Merry lost his smallness, his safety, his peace, yet he found a courage, a friend, a tale. The Nazgûl too lost everything, yet in their loss they found a moment, a grace, a release. The Nazgûl's tale is also one of temptation, not merely the temptation of the rings, but the temptation of the self, the heart, the soul. To be a king is to be tempted by power, by glory, by eternity. The Nazgûl were tempted not by evil, but by good. By the good they sought, the dreams they held, the loves they cherished. The warrior was tempted by peace, the scholar by wisdom, the poet by song, the healer by life, the navigator by adventure, the builder by permanence, the seer by fate, the hunter by strength, the father by love. Yet in their temptation they fell, not because they were weak, but because they were human, because they believed, because they hoped. Temptation is a thread that runs through Middle-earth's legends. Frodo was tempted by the ring, by its promise of power, of safety, of rest, yet he resisted, not always but enough. Sam was tempted by the ring, by its offer of a garden, of a home, of a world, yet he refused his love stronger than its lure. Aragorn was tempted by the ring, by its promise of a kingdom, of a victory, of a love yet. He turned away his heart true. Gandalf was tempted by the ring, by its offer of power, of justice, of order, yet he rejected it, his wisdom greater than its call. Galadriel was tempted by the ring, by its vision of a queen, of a world, of a light, yet she chose to diminish her will. Unbroken Éowyn was tempted by despair, by a cage, by a shadow, yet she chose to fight her courage. A flame. Merry was tempted by fear, by smallness, by retreat, yet he chose to act, his heart a spark. The Nazgûl too were tempted, and in their temptation they fell, but in their release they glimpsed a truth, a light, a hope. The Nazgûl's tale is also one of faith, not the faith they had, but the faith they lacked. To be a king is to have faith in one's people, in one's purpose, in oneself. The Nazgûl had faith once in their dreams, their loves, their hopes, but they placed that faith in the rings, in Sauron, in power. They lost faith in themselves, in their humanity, in the light that endures. Yet in their final moments, they found a kind of faith, not in a god, not in a cause, but in the moment, in the release, in the possibility of something beyond the shadow. Faith is a thread that binds Middle-earth's heroes. Frodo had faith in his mission, in his friends, in the good that remained even when he faltered. Sam had faith in Frodo, in the Shire, in the stars, even when the dark was deepest. Aragorn had faith in his people, in his love, in his destiny, even when the path was shadowed. Gandalf had faith in the small, in the weak, in the light, even when the fire burned low. Galadriel had faith in her choice, in her heart, in the west, even when the mirror showed shadow. Éowyn had faith in her courage, in her honor, in her stand, even when despair called. Merry had faith in his friends, in his heart, in his blade, even when fear loomed. The Nazgûl too had faith once, and in their loss they found a moment of faith, a fleeting belief in the light that awaited. The Nazgûl's tale is also one of hope, not the hope they held, but the hope they found. To be a wraith is to be without hope, a shadow without light, a void without spark. The Nazgûl had no hope in their servitude, no dream in their hunt, no light in their dark. Yet in their final moments, they found hope not in redemption, not in glory, but in release, in the possibility of an end, in the whisper of a dawn beyond the night. Hope is a thread that weaves through Middle-earth's stories. Frodo found hope in Sam, in the Shire, in the light. Even when the ring was heavy, Sam found hope in Frodo. In the stars, in the earth, even when the fire burned, Aragorn found hope in Arwen, in Gondor. In the dawn, even when the shadow grew, Gandalf found hope in hobbits, in men in the flame. Even when the dark was vast, Galadriel found hope in the west, in the choice, in the light. Even when the mirror darkened, Éowyn found hope in battle, in love and life. Even when despair called, Merry found hope in friendship, in courage, in heart. Even when fear rose, the Nazgûl too found hope not in life but in death, not in servitude but in release, a hope that was their own. As we stand in the ruins of Mordor, where the ash settles and the wind sings, let us reflect on the Nazgûl's tale, not as a story of wraiths, but as a story of souls, of choices of light. They were men like us who dreamed of greatness, who sought to defy time, who fell to a promise too bright to resist. Their fall was not sudden but gradual, a slow descent into shadow, choice by choice, step by step. Their release was not earned, but given a grace, unlooked for, a mercy unasked. Their tale is a warning, a lament, a hope, a warning to beware the whispers of power, a lament for the loss of self, a hope that even in the deepest darkness, there is a light that cannot be quenched. What is the measure of a life? Not the years it spans, not the deeds it achieves, but the truth it holds, the love it gives, the hope it kindles. The Nazgûl in their pride forgot this truth, and in their fall they lost it. Yet in their end, they glimpsed it again. If only for a moment. Their story is a thread in the great tapestry of Middle-earth, woven with sorrow, with warning, with hope. It is a thread that connects us all. For we too walk paths, shadowed by temptation, burdened by fear, lit by hope. We too bear rings, though they may not gleam with runes. We too seek eternity, though we may not name it so. As we close this chapter, as we step back from the edge of the void, let us carry the Nazgûl's echo with us, not as a weight, but as a song. Let us sing of their fall, of their bondage, of their release. Let us sing of the light that endures, of the hope that abides, of the truth that cannot be broken. Let us sing of Middle-earth, of its shadows, and its stars, of its sorrows, and its joys, of its endings and its beginnings. And let us sing of ourselves wanderers, all who walk the paths of this world, seeking, striving, hoping, until the final note of the great song is sung. Farewell, wanderers of Middle-earth. May you find your way through the shadows. May you bear your burdens with courage. May you seek the light that abides, until the stars fade, until the earth is remade, until the final note of the great song is sung. May you walk in hope, in faith, in the quiet strength of those who know that even in the darkest of tales there is a dawn.